Dragon Age Inquisition was rated M for mature by the ESRB and contains blood, intense violence, nudity, sexual content, and strong language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello everyone, my name is Amaronith and I play games for the internet, and today we're playing Dragon Age Inquisition. We've just killed our first dragon, so of course it's time for Codex readings. I will freely admit to y'all, my notes are not quite updated from the last Codex reading, so be a little patient if I repeat anything. Yeah. So, let's go. Starting with creatures. Did we get any new mounts? No. Dragon. A fully mature adult female dragon is a high dragon, the great monster of legend, the rarest of all dragon kind. These dragons hollow out massive lairs for themselves, for they need the space to house their harem of drakes as well as their eggs and dragonlings. High dragons are seldom seen. They spend most of their time sleeping and mating, living off prey their drakes bring back. But once every 100 years or so, the high dragon prepares for clutching by emerging from her lair and taking wing. She will fly far and wide, eating hundreds of animals, most often livestock, over the course of a few weeks, leaving smoldering devastation in her wake. She then returns to her lair to lay her eggs, and will not again appear in the skies for another century. Hurlock Alpha. We brought it to Lord Varon's chamber, strong men on both sides holding the shackles. It had been stripped of weapons and beaten until we judged it barely capable of walking. I am told you are the lone survivor of the Darkspawn from the mines, Lord Varon said to it. A Hurlock, as I understand it. I am told that you spoke to my men when we captured you. The thing spoke, told them they would die. Its voice was guttural and savage, like a beast trained to mimic the language of men, but we made out its words clearly enough. Yes, said Lord Varon, you are smarter than your fellow beasts. Yes, said the beast. I would know more of this, said Lord Varon, that we might understand your people and negotiate. You will, said the beast. Your men beat me until their knuckles bled, my blood mixed with theirs. Soon they will hear the song. Soon their blood will burn, and I will lead them. The men all looked to their hands, for the blood sickness of the Darkspawn was known to us. When they did, the beast wrenched the shackles from their grip, and then it was upon Lord Varon, holding him by the throat. There is no talk, it said. No negotiation. You will die. Your world will die. Now you understand. It snapped Lord Varon's neck and killed 4 men before we finally killed it. An excerpt from the Blighted Codex, a classified collection of studies on the Darkspawn, held safely in the Imperial Library in Minrathous, available only to members of the Magisterium. Ooh, I didn't know that. I mean, obviously. That's a new one. Revenant. An entire unit of men, all slain by one creature. I didn't believe it at first, your perfection, but it appears that this is so. We have a survivor, and while at first I thought his rantings pure exaggeration, it appears to be no simple skeleton. The descriptions of the creature's abilities were eerily similar to those our brothers at Marnus Pell encountered almost an age ago. Men pulled through the air to skewer themselves on the creature's blade, and attacked so quick that it was able to assault multiple opponents at once. No, your perfection. What we have here is indeed a revenant, and nothing less. From a letter to Divine Amara III, 571 Exalted. A revenant is a corpse possessed by a demon of pride or of desire, making it among the most powerful possessed opponents one can face. Many possess spells, but most are armed and armored, and prefer the use of their martial talents. They are weak against physical attacks, but regenerate quickly and commonly use telekinesis to pull opponents into melee range, should they try to flee. Revenants also have the ability to strike multiple opponents surrounding them, stay at range if possible, and strike quickly. That is the only way to take such a creature down. Pardon me. Groups. Vashoth, the Grey Ones. Why do you keep asking me about the Qun? I am not Qunari. I met a human once who made shoes. Why don't you tell me about shoemaking? You've met more Qunari than I have. I've lived my whole life here in Navarra. No, I am not Tal-Vashoth. Tal-Vashoth are rebels. You cannot rebel against something you've never seen. I am Vashoth. No, I didn't use the same word. It's Vashoth, not Tal-Vashoth. Nobody told me humans couldn't hear speech. No. No. I hate humans. Unused portion of a transcript from an interview with Isala, a Qunari goat herder found in the notes of Brother Genetivi. I feel like... am I missing something? Ah, yes, I skipped it. Sorry. Tal-Vashoth. Our wagon was traveling from the port village to one of the larger cities when they fell upon us. They shrieked like beasts, their facial markings were savage and nonsensical, their brutal weapons chipped and uncared for, and they stank of unwashed sweat as they charged. The Tal-Vashoth snarled as they fought. One of the workers was bitten. The guards cut them down with blades until they fled, then finished the rest with arrows. We followed their trail into the forest and found their camp. There were women, hunched and cowering as no woman should be, filthy children, thin and underfed, and corpses. I will always remember the corpses. There were more Tal-Vashoth as well, and the guards cut them down. As they disarmed the last Tal-Vashoth, one guard asked him why he lived like this, why he acted in this manner. The Tal-Vashoth looked him in the eye and said, "I deny the Qun." Then he threw himself upon the guard's blade. I have questioned the Qun. I believed many of us have, although we do not admit it to each other. But when I saw the rage in the Tal-Vashoth warrior's eyes, when I saw the horrible savagery that the Qun alone holds in check, I knew where I belonged. I am not a perfect Qunari, but I know my place and my purpose. I am content. An excerpt from an interview with a Qunari worker in Kirkwall. History. Hargrave Keep. In 652 storm, Ban Hargrave's knights helped drive Avar invaders from Ferelden's lowlands. When the king asked Hargrave to pursue the retreating tribes, she refused, demanding funds to build a keep. Caught between a fractured court, Hargrave's knights, and an impending famine, the king reluctantly granted her a large parcel of land to the south. After defeating the Avar regrouping in the boglands, the band built her castle. As the famine grew worse, the wisdom behind her choice of location became clear. Hargrave Keep ate well, dining on a steady supply in fish and game, while the farmland starved. Hargrave's line died out fighting Orlesian invaders in the Blessed Age. Only the village at the base of the keep remains inhabited, as the keep has fallen into disrepair. From Notable Fortresses, Castles, Towers, and Other Edifices of Interest in Ferelden, by Henry Lannon. The First Blight, Chapter 2. People today have little concept of the consequences of the second sin. Oh, believe me when I say when asked, pious chantry-going folk will curse the use of foul magic, spitting and snapping their fingers, but none live today who actually remember the horror that was unleashed so very long ago. Whatever records might have existed regrettably did not survive the chaos and ignorance that was to follow. We have only the tales of survivors handed down through the murky ages, and the dogma of the chantry to instruct us, and that is precious little indeed. I believe I am not understating when I say that the second sin unleashed the bane of all life upon Thedas. The Darkspawn are more virulent than the worst plague, a heartless force of nature that came into our world like an ill wind. For we know from accounts of later blights, as these Darkspawn invasions came to be called, never has a more appropriate name existed, that the Darkspawn spread disease and famine wherever they tread. The earth itself is corrupted by their presence, the sky roiling with angry black clouds. I do not exaggerate, my friends, when I say that a mass gathering of Darkspawn is an omen of dread cataclysm. It is said that those cursed magisters who became the first Darkspawn scratched at the very earth to find solace in the darkness of the dwarven deep roads, and there in the shadows they multiplied, whether by intelligent design or by some last vestige of worship in their minds. They attempted to locate the old gods they had once served. They found what they sought, Dumat, first among the old gods, once known as the Dragon of Silence before the Maker imprisoned him, and all his brethren beneath the earth for the first sin, usurping the Maker's place in mankind's heart. The slumbering dragon awoke, freed from the Maker's prison by his twisted followers, and became corrupted himself. Dumat was transformed into the first archdemon, his great and terrible power given will by a rotting, unholy mind. With the Darkspawn horde following, Dumat rose and took wing in the skies once again, bringing ruin to the world the Maker had created. The old god had become the eye of a dark storm that would ravage the entire world. From Tales of the Destruction of Thedas by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. Letters and Notes. Waterlogged Diary. A diary found in the Fellowmire. One water-soaked entry, dated 10 days ago, is still legible. The damned root leaks, and I've been eating boiled roots for a week. I'm squatting in a bog no one so much as spit in for 10 years. Still better than the alienage, thank Andraste. That's the last time I visit the city for a while. I'm worried about the gardeners. They weren't sick when I left, and now they're all down with a fever. Their little boy is at death's door. Nigel Marsh said we should lock them in their home, the sour codger. Maybe I can bring something to help. Is it deathroot that cures a fever, or elfroot? It can't be deathroot, can it? Ask Ira which is right. Oh, fuck. That's... Places. Deep roads. There isn't a dwarf alive who remembers the deep roads as they once were. They were a network of tunnels that joined the tides together. To be honest, it isn't even right to give them such a simple term as tunnels. They are works of art, with centuries of planning demonstrated in the geometry of their walls, with the statues of the paragons that watch over travelers, with the flow of lava that keeps the deep roads lit and warm. The cloud gazers up on the surface talk of the imperial highway built by the magisters of old, a raised walkway that crossed thousands of miles, something that could only have been built by magic. Perhaps it is comparable to the deep roads, although we dwarves didn't need magic. I suppose it doesn't matter anymore. The Darkspawn rule the deep roads now. When Orzammar sealed off the entrances to the deep roads, abandoning everything that lay out there, we handed over the kingdom that was to those black bastards forever. To think that there are genlocks crawling all over Bonamar now, tearing down our statues and defiling our greatest works. Corruption covers everything we built out there. Every dwarf who goes out and comes back says it gets worse with each passing year. The foulness spread a little farther. And the cloud gazers think the darkspawn are gone just because they aren't spilling out onto the surface? Huh. One day, when Orzammar is gone for good, they'll find out differently. Those darkspawn won't have anywhere else to go but up, and they'll do it. The surface folk will have themselves a blight that will never end. Transcript of a conversation with a member of the Dwarven mining caste, 890 blessed. Bottles of Thedas, updated. Garbolg's Backcountry Reserve, likely dropped to avoid seizure by authorities or because of seizure due to drinking it. Garbolg only brewed from 874 to 892 blessed, killed when the vapors in his beard spontaneously combusted. Dragon Piss, the name is probably figurative, but no one knows for sure. Butterbile, 784. A hard liquor that is not so much served as it is brandished. Coarse and indifferent, it is to your taste, or it is not. The failing is yours if you cannot raise, or lower, to the challenge of a distiller told not to. Vint 9 Rowan's Rose. Delicate to the nose, comfort to the tongue, and, strangely, a half-remembered whisper to the ears. It is described as, and inspired, a wistful spirit. A Vinter's Opus. Carnal. 869 blessed. An Orlesian liqueur for the daring, or those who wish to seem so. Said to enhance sensation, and at the bottom an erotically carved peach pit. The design is plain, but the bottler assures that the act of carving was scandalous. Caspar the Magnificent. King Caspar the Magnificent saw 127 summers before he finally left for eternal slumber beneath our great kingdom. Even on that last day, the king sparred with his great-grandson, Mathis the Glorious, and bested him. King Caspar showed no signs of weakness or decrepitude in his advanced age, and proved more than a match for the much younger man. Caspar met every blow Mathis delivered, and returned each with twice the vigor. In the end, the great king threw his grandson to the ground, and with one stroke of his sword sheared the beard clean off Mathis's chin. "You are a Pentagast," the king said. "Have some care for your appearance." Chastised, Mathis sent for his attendants, and bade them to bathe and groom him. Thereafter his chin was always shaved obsessively close to the skin. As for the king, he retired to his chambers for his afternoon nap. When it came time for supper, the servants were unable to rouse him, and that is how King Caspar the Magnificent, 60 years the supreme lord of Navarra, finally set aside his crown. From the Pentagast Kings of Navarra, a growing book of family legends. Darktown's Deal. Ask the nobles of Orzammar how their kingdom gets silks and grains and wines from the surface, and they'll tell you trade with the surface occurs. It occurs, as if on its own, with no traders or merchants or human farmers involved. A little miracle of dwarven ingenuity. The reality is a lot messier than their fantasy. Orzammar relies upon the surface, not just for its prosperity, but for its survival. Ages of blights have taken thousands of taigs away from the dwarves. These were the places where most of the food was raised. The dwarven kingdom that endured alone, independent beneath the stone from time immemorial, perished in the first blight, faded into myth. Now the remaining dwarves underground cling to existence through a lifeline to the surface, a chain forged from the casteless. Every dwarf who goes to the surface is stripped of caste, effectively exiled and removed from dwarven society forever, but Orzammar relies on continued relation with these exiles to live. This has created a shadowy area of dwarven trade and politics where the rich, powerful, and elite maintain secret ties to people who, by official decree, no longer exist, and everyone knows what kinds of things lurk in the shadows. The Carta lives in the underbelly of the surface trade like a tapeworm. Many surface dwarves maintain ties, not officially recognized, of course, but respectable, to their former houses in the noble or merchant castes, and those contacts are their means of trading with Orzammar. Those who have no ties because they were cast off by their families or never had good connections make the trip back underground to trade with Orzammar personally, where they find themselves treated like criminals. A casteless in Orzammar, even a wealthy one from the surface, will be driven away from most merchants, treated like he's carrying the plague at best, so these surface merchants turn to the Carta for help. The Carta acts as a contact in Orzammar for surface businesses and sells their goods on the black market. For a cut, of course. The Carta always gets its cut. The outraged citizens of Orzammar sometimes petition the Assembly to deal with the rampant crime surrounding the black market, and showy displays are made of kicking in the doors to the Carta hideouts and razing Darktown. But the Carta always comes back, because the Assembly always allows it. Too much of Orzammar is dependent on the black market trade, and the nobles know it. They all do business with the Carta. Everyone has a stake in its success. The Carta has 1,000 faces above and below the surface, honest merchants and noble caste lords and upstanding members of the Merchants' Guild, all a cover for the 1,000 more smugglers, thieves, and murderers in the shadows. The lifeline of Orzammar. Praise the ancestors. Excerpted from Darktown's Deal by Varric Tethras. Grey Whiskey, Ritewine, Conscription Ale. Updated. Perhaps local to a handful of Grey Warden companies, these spirits reflect a custom or legend born of utility. Allowed to seize goods to aid their cause, wardens combined half-full bottles to save space while traveling. Never fully emptied or, as with a kettle, cleaned, each individually takes on a base flavor as unique as the warden carrying it. What do we care? Nothing burns like the first cup. Could be fact, could be tribute. It does seem as though the bottles range farther than the namesake warden could. A bottle marked Vintage, Warden Riordan. Serve yourself. A bottle marked Vintage, Warden Bethany Hawk. Princess Piss. Why is Chapter 5 up there when Chapters 1 and 2 are down here? Whatever. Shred of Blue. Here the rain upon the leaves, above the sky lies grey. A shred of blue would be denied, alas, he could not stay. There was a stir within his blood, and the dreams lay thick upon him. A call did beat within his heart, one road was left before him. Here the rain upon the leaves, above the sky lies grey. A shred of blue would be denied, alas, he could not stay. See how the rain has washed away the tears that you were crying? Though the darkness calls me down, you know we all are dying. Here the rain upon the leaves, above the sky lies grey. A shred of blue would be denied, alas, he could not stay. And so he came upon the place where so many tread before, one last look upon the world before he crossed that final door. Here the rain upon the leaves, above the sky lies grey. A shred of blue would be denied, alas, he could not stay. Birds reel across the endless sky, above a house upon the plain. In memory she sings to him of a time before the rain. Sweet Andraste, hear our song, for his road will be ours too. Before darkness claims our souls, let us see that shred of blue. Here the rain upon the leaves, above the sky lies grey. A shred of blue would be denied, alas, he could not stay. Words to a song scrawled on a spare paper, writer unknown. The Folly of General Not-Sheritan. Updated. 3. But during times of crisis there can emerge abilities we do not know we possess. The servant, under the greatest duress, stood as Not-Sheritan. She stood and she spoke. She stood and she led. She stood and she attacked. And under banners they knew and a voice they did not, the forces of Orlais brought low their enemy. Now perhaps the servant was more lieutenant than page to her battle-hardened lord, and perhaps the strength of the foe is stressed too much in retellings, and perhaps the allied were well practiced in their roles, but none question that Not-Sheritan was at the least adequate and at the most inspirational. 4. And so it was that victory was absolute, and cheers were raised for General Not-Sheritan, and so buoyed by respect and admiration Not-Sheritan stood proud and removed the mask to state her true name. For had they not accepted her? Had they not thrived by her leadership? Had they not become comrades despite station and masks and nonsense of protocol? And the answer was swift and bewildering, for they had not. And swiftly she was bundled away amid calls of impostor and spy, and other terms she could not know, for she still did not know Orlais. 5. In the days that followed, to avoid scandal, the appointing of Not-Sheritan was claimed a grand tactic of the true general, who must have orchestrated the whole affair from secret. From secret, meaning the cloakroom, for not even his own attendants knew his face, and they would have had the guard whisk him to jail for trespassing. But with his mask restored and wary of the embarrassment, the general was merciful with Not-Sheritan, imposing less than half the prescribed lashes and sparing her and her lord the gallows. They were allowed to leave Orlais on the condition that Not-Sheritan was henceforth her name. The Pyramids of Par Vollen. The island called Par Vollen was the first land in Thedas to be taken by the Qunari, and has been held by them ever since. But while the Qunari have raised their own marvels on the island, the famed city of Cunadar comes to mind. Par Vollen has had a rich history before the Qun ever came to its shores. Tear your eyes from Cunadar's wonders and look instead to the jungle. There you'll see the ruins of vast cities that proclaim in silence, "We were here." Par Vollen's distinctive pyramids, looming from the overgrowth, have remained largely intact, even if their intended purpose has been lost. They do not seem to be tombs, though some chambers contain bodies that have been carefully preserved. Amazingly, the pyramid's proportions are mathematically perfect. Since their alignment is so precise, one suspects they served some scientific purpose. Observatories, perhaps? Advent Therastus. It's a name. Advent Therastus has observed that the shape of the Par Vollen pyramid seems perfectly to match the constellation Solium. We know more of the pyramids than we do of the humans who built them. The Qunari came to Par Vollen as conquerors, but there is no history and little sign of battles fought on the island shores. A civilization that could build such vast cities would surely have defenses, armies, perhaps weapons alien even to the Qunari. So why is there so little proof of resistance? One answer may lie in what remains of their temples. Beneath the leaves and vines covering the walls, you can still make out the stylized carvings that adorn them. The paint has long since flaked away, but the silhouettes are clear. Intricate sea creatures, shipwrights, musicians, archers, and kings. Here and there, odd figures are depicted, tall, horned, always in position of authority and respect. What were these horned figures to the ancients of Par Vollen? priests ritualistically crowned? Heroes? Gods, perhaps? We may never know the truth, but when the Qunari arrived from the sea, horned and carrying the word of the Qun, perhaps instead of conquerors, the people of Par Vollen saw them as an old legend returning to them. This is all supposition. The humans of Par Vollen are Qunari now, their ancient civilization discarded like a child's toy. Yet the pyramids remain, along with the old cities, the island itself. One day, greater scholars may hear what they have to say. From a compiled history of the occupied North by Renatus of Islay. Huh. That's really fascinating. What is green? What is green? Imagine I should present to you an object which, to my mind, is of indisputable greenness, and ask, does this thing appear to you to be green? Naturally, you might say that it does, for you have come to recognize the appearance of the color of the object to be green, associating the word with what your eyes see. But could it be my understanding of green differs entirely from yours? What if, perchance, you could see into my mind? You might realize that all things that I name green are actually red in your understanding. Ah, without the moorings of objective truth, we are set adrift in oceans of solitary experience. The promising opening to a lecture given by Karsten Groke, philosopher-poet at the University of Orlais. The lecture's quality dropped significantly after this point, and ended quickly when Groke subjected audience members to a poorly constructed ode to chartreuse. He fled from the auditorium under fire from students armed with overripe red tomatoes. But on that note, that's all for now. And I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourselves and be safe. Bye-bye.